Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. I too rise to speak on this motion, and I would like to endorse all of the comments from my colleagues on this side of the chamber. And I think as we reflect on the significance of the one-year anniversary yesterday on the 7th of October, one of the things that I've been reflecting very deeply on is the fact that this is not just Israel's war. This is equally Australia's war, and for all of our freedom and democratic-loving countries. We don't have to look too far back in our own history to know that democracy is not self-evident. It is not self-perpetuating. And the freedoms that we all enjoy, not just all of us, have been hard fought for and must continue to be fought for. And the impact that this terrible catastrophe that has occurred in Israel is something that we have to accept, that we have to fight for. We have to fight not just for the right of Jewish Australians, who are Australians, and they deserve all of the protections and all of the freedoms that are accorded and that all Australians can expect. But what we have seen here in Australia since the 7th of October last year is turning our nation into something that sometimes I can barely recognise. The hatred that has been spewed in this chamber, in the media, in our campuses, and in some of our communities, in protests, in support of listed terrorist organisations, and into the atrocities that they have committed on the 7th of October. Now, if you listen to some of those opposite, you would think that this was a war and an atrocity that Israel perpetuated. It did not. It was carefully and calculatedly planned and prepared for many years by Hamas. Hamas leader Sinwar, 6 months before the 7th of October, was very proud to tell potential donors and supporters that they had been preparing for years for a big surprise on Israel. They dug 150 kilometres at least of tunnels going from 30 to 150 feet below Gaza. They built munitions factories underneath Gaza. They built military barracks, tunnels, homes, in essence, and they were preparing for war against Israel. And how did they fund it? They funded it through diverting aid donations, aid support. They taxed their own people to prepare for war. They diverted hundreds of millions of dollars from those who needed it most in Gaza to prepare for the war that they have unleashed on Israel. And those opposite talk about the suffering of the Palestinians. Absolutely. But Israel did not start this. Hamas did. And they knew what they were doing. They knew when they unleashed thousands of their soldiers into Israel. They sent them with cameras to murder, to commit a massacre in the most heinous of all ways. And they filmed it and they shared it. Women, children, it defies even discussion or debate. But they did this knowing that Israel would retaliate from this unprovoked attack. They knew the danger that they were putting the Palestinian people in. They knew and they did not care. So please do not think for a second that this was Israel's war to start. But this is our war to finish, standing side by side with the Israelis. And one of the things we haven't focused enough on in this chamber, I think, is why this is our war. Because this is not just a what's now a kinetic war in the Levant. Australia and our democratic allies are facing an axis or an alliance of 4 nations: Iran, Russia, China and North Korea, who are working together hand in hand in ways that we never thought possible. They are helping each other prosecute their own wars and their own fights. Russia in Ukraine is getting significant support from Israel and from North Korea in terms of ballistic missiles and other supports. Iran is using its proxies: Hezbollah, Hamas and the Houthi. They are not just Israel's enemies, they are our enemies as well. What do they have in common? They all have nuclear capabilities. They exert brutal domestic control on their populations, and they have a shared hatred of democracy. And those opposite, if you think that this is not what this is about, it is about helping each other fight each other's wars. We are facing a threat in this country. We have been subject of a gross weaponisation of our social media and our media. How on earth, not only have those opposite been so radicalised, but how have our universities turned into hotbeds of anti-Semitism, of hatred, and have now turned into unsafe places for thousands of Australian students? How have we got high school students who are chanting from the river to the sea? How many of them actually even know what river and what sea and what it actually means? It is a call for genocide, which those opposite are now sprouting. How has this happened? How are we not paying more attention to how this radicalisation and how this hatred for democracy, how this hatred for Australian Jews, how is this all happening? We have to start looking at things much more closely and understanding that there is so much more at stake than Israel's sovereignty and its right to exist and its right to defend itself. So today, in this chamber, we commemorate and we mourn for the dead and for the hostages, and we mourn what I think is not just a threat to Israel, but a threat to our own democracy. So this is why all of us in this place and in our nation have to look more widely. We have to say that we stand by Israel. We stand by the Australian Jewish community. We will fight for you. We will fight with you, because your fight has to be our fight. Thank you.